You're watching I Have No Sleep and I Must Dream, a place for uncomfortable truths. Sleep well or stay awake. Ever pulled an all-nighter or stayed awake into the wee hours? Then you probably know the immediate short-term effects of sleep deprivation. Missing just a single night of sleep can make you feel off, groggy, on edge, and not quite yourself. But beyond feeling tired, your body and brain start to slip in measurable ways after one sleepless night. For starters, staying awake for about 24 hours straight effectively turns you into a cognitively impaired version of yourself. How impaired? Research has shown that after a full day with no sleep, you're about as mentally sluggish as if you had a blood alcohol level of 0.10%. For comparison, that's above the legal driving limit of 0.08% in many places. In other words, pulling an all-nighter can leave you as impaired as if you were drunk. Your reaction times slow down. Your attention span shortens, and your judgment becomes shaky. Not exactly a recipe for peak performance. Even after approximately 17 to 18 hours awake, say you got up at 7 a.m. and it's now past midnight, you may already be functioning as if you have a 0.05% blood alcohol level. No wonder late-night drivers weaving on the road sometimes resemble drunk drivers. In a sense, they practically are. In fact, drowsy driving is incredibly dangerous, accounting for an estimated 1 in 5 fatal car crashes in the US each year. If you only got, say, 4 or 5 hours of sleep last night, your risk of crashing your car is several times higher than if you slept a full night. Back to that first 24 hours without sleep. Besides feeling tired and clumsy, you'll notice your mood taking a hit. People become more anxious, irritable, and quick to anger when they haven't slept. Little annoyances that wouldn't normally bother you might make you snap or feel overwhelmed. You might also find yourself getting unusually emotional or giggly. Some folks report a weird giddiness or euphoria creeping in, as if the brain swings between irritability and slap-happy silliness to cope. Those mood swings are your brain's way of saying it's not operating with its full emotional regulation toolkit. Cognitively, even one night of lost sleep will mess with your concentration and memory. You may find it hard to focus on tasks. Your mind wanders, and simple chores feel like complex tasks. Misplacing your keys or forgetting what you were about to say happens more when you're sleep-deprived. In fact, your ability to form new memories drops. Studies have found that pulling an all-nighter can seriously impair memory encoding in the hippocampus, the brain's memory center, meaning you learn less and forget more. So, staying up all night to cram for a test is usually counterproductive. You'll likely remember much less than if you had slept, because your brain wasn't able to properly absorb or retain the information. Physically, one sleepless night can also manifest in subtle ways. Your eyes might have trouble focusing. People report blurred or double vision after 20+ hours awake. You might notice you're misjudging distances or depth slightly. For example, reaching for a coffee mug and misestimating how far away it is. This is because the visual processing part of your brain is fatigued and not syncing as well with your motor system. You'll probably also start experiencing the classic heavy eyelids, frequent yawning, and maybe a slight hand tremor as your body fights to stay alert. And let's not forget the microsleeps, the brain's sneaky tactic to get some rest even when you're trying to stay awake. After around 24 hours with no sleep, especially if you're sitting still, Your brain may start taking little naps that last just a second or two. These are called microsleeps. Your eyes might briefly droop or your head nods, and your brain essentially shuts off for a few seconds without you realizing it. You've probably seen someone do the classic head bob at a boring meeting or while driving late at night. That's a microsleep. It's your body saying, "I'm going to sleep, even if you don't want to." You can imagine how dangerous that is if you're behind the wheel or doing something critical. A few seconds of microsleep is enough to miss a red light or a crucial step in whatever task you're doing. Interestingly, at the 24-hour mark, some people also start to feel a bit cold and clumsy. Your sense of balance can worsen. Ever feel wobbly pulling an all-nighter? And fine motor skills suffer. This happens because sleep is important for the parts of the brain that coordinate movement. So, after a night without sleep, you might notice you're a bit unsteady on your feet or butterfingered, dropping things or bumping into door frames you'd normally clear.
It's also common to develop a headache after prolonged time awake, often a dull, tension-type headache. The exact cause isn't fully clear, but likely relates to muscle tension, stress hormones, and just general physiological stress from staying awake too long. So, to recap this first stage, 24 hours without sleep makes you as impaired as if you were drunk, hurts your attention, memory, and mood, can blur your vision, throw off your balance, and even induce micronaps and headaches. And yet, as unpleasant as all that sounds, in the grand scheme, it's considered mild sleep deprivation. The real crazy stuff often starts after the 1-day mark, which is where we're headed next. 36 hours and beyond, when reality starts slipping. Pushing past a full day and night without sleep into the realm of 36 hours awake and more, the effects of sleep deprivation get more intense. By this point, your urge to sleep will be overwhelming. You'll feel a heavy, almost irresistible pressure to just close your eyes. Sleep researchers call this buildup sleep pressure, and after 36 hours, it's near its peak. Your body is practically begging for rest. At 36 hours without sleep, everything from the 24-hour mark is magnified. Concentration is extremely poor. Reaction time is slowed even further, and those microsleeps will strike more frequently and last longer. You might literally start dreaming while awake for a few seconds during a microsleep, which can be disorienting. People often don't realize they just had a microsleep. You might come out of one with a quick jerk and a blink, thinking, "Whoa, I almost fell asleep," not realizing you actually did for a moment. Your mood and behavior can get pretty erratic by 36 hours. Irritability can escalate to outright anger or aggression. Little things might set you off disproportionately. Conversely, some people swing into an odd euphoria or giddiness around this time. This isn't the good kind of euphoria. It's more like your brain's fatigue-induced glee, and it often comes with poor judgment. You might find everything funny or nothing at all. Emotional responses become unreliable. Hallucinations can also begin as early as the second day with no sleep. It might start subtly. You think you see something move in your peripheral vision that isn't there, or hear your phone buzz when it didn't. By about 36 hours, some people start experiencing mild hallucinations. Maybe a fleeting image or a sense of a shadow that isn't real.
These tend to be simple and brief at first, like seeing a flicker of light or a static object seeming to wave. Additionally, regulating your emotions becomes extremely difficult without sleep. At 36+ hours awake, the brain's prefrontal cortex, the rational, decision-making part, is so exhausted that the amygdala, the emotional center, is running wild. This is why you see both exaggerated negative reactions, anger, frustration, and sometimes inappropriate positive reactions, like laughing at something sad, in severely sleep-deprived people. Your brain's brake pedals have failed, so to speak. Physically, coordination and balance deteriorate even more by this stage. You'll likely be stumbling or fumbling often. Your eyes might have trouble focusing on objects, leading to double vision or difficulty tracking moving things. Some people at 36+ hours get episodes of what's called automatic behavior. You might do something very simple, like scribble notes or sort papers, without memory of doing it, almost like you've zoned out. It's akin to being on autopilot, because parts of your brain are essentially offline. If you've ever been up for 2 nights in a row, you also know that by the middle of the second sleepless day, your body feels drained of energy. You may get waves of nausea or a hollow, hungry feeling in your stomach. Or, conversely, some people lose appetite entirely. It can go either way, as sleep affects hunger hormones. Some research has noted that by 36 hours without sleep, people often report increased appetite and cravings. Your body starts seeking quick energy from food to compensate for fatigue. So you might find yourself mindlessly snacking on high-carb or sugary foods if you're awake that long, because your brain is demanding fuel. Now, let's push it further. 48 hours without sleep. A full 2 days and 2 nights awake. This is often termed extreme sleep deprivation, and for good reason. By the 48-hour point, reality can get pretty weird. Hallucinations are much more likely after 2 straight days awake. These aren't just quick little flickers at the corner of your eye. They can become vivid and immersive. For instance, you might actually see insects crawling on the wall that aren't there, or hear someone call your name when no one did. Visual distortions are common. You might look at a patterned carpet and it momentarily swirls or moves, or a shadow in the corner might morph in your perception into an animal or person before snapping back to reality. Essentially, the brain's perceptual system starts misfiring. At 48 hours, many people experience microsleep episodes that are longer, maybe 5 to 15 seconds, and you can come out of them very disoriented. If you happen to have one while, say, standing up, you might actually lose muscle control briefly. Some people sway or even fall over if they microsleep on their feet. It's easy to see how dangerous this can be in any situation. Emotionally and cognitively, 48 hours without sleep is like your brain is in survival mode. Confusion is common. You might forget what you were doing just a moment ago or get bewildered by simple instructions. Depersonalization can occur, making you feel detached from yourself, as if you're observing your own actions from outside your body. People often describe this as feeling numb or not real, like they're on autopilot or in a dream. You may also lose track of time.
hours blur together, and you might not be sure if something happened today or yesterday, since your normal day-night cues are all disrupted. A hallmark of 48+ hours without sleep is that the line between waking and dreaming blurs. You might start having micro-dreams or fragmented dreamlike thoughts while awake. For example, you could vividly remember a conversation or an event, then later realize it never actually happened. You may have dreamt it briefly during a microsleep or simply imagined it. Essentially, at this stage, your brain is so desperate for rest that bits of REM sleep can intrude into wakefulness. This is why people who go 2 to 3 days without sleep often report feeling like they're going crazy. Their mind is generating perceptions that aren't real, and it's truly disorienting. Let's add an anecdote here. In 1959, a radio DJ named Peter Tripp stayed awake for 201 hours over 8 days for a publicity stunt. And long before he hit the 8-day mark, around day 3 or 4, he began hallucinating heavily. He reportedly saw things like spiders crawling in his shoes and imagined mice scurrying around his booth. By roughly 48 hours in, he became paranoid and delirious, at one point convinced that a scientist who came in was an undertaker there to bury him. Tripp's experience, observed by psychologists, showed that just 2 to 3 days without sleep can profoundly distort your mind. After he finally slept, Tripp returned to normal behavior, though some who knew him said his personality was never quite the same, a testament to how traumatic severe sleep loss can be. The third day, 72 hours without sleep, is where even the hardiest individuals start to unravel. By approximately 72 hours awake, nearly everyone is experiencing complex hallucinations, not just quick glimpses, but full-blown visions or voices that aren't really there. You might have conversations with people who aren't present, or see intricate scenes playing out that dissolve when you try to focus on them. Delusions can set in too, firmly believing things that aren't true. For example, that you're being watched or that you have an urgent mission to complete. Your thinking becomes extremely disorganized, and speech may become slurred and incoherent by the third day. It's comparable to someone in a psychotic episode or extremely intoxicated. You might start a sentence and forget what you were saying, or your words jumble together. By this point, sleep deprivation has effectively induced a temporary psychosis in many people. They've lost firm contact with reality. Hallucinations, delusions, emotional volatility, even aggressive behavior can emerge after about 3 days with no sleep. Crucially, the person often doesn't realize these perceptions are false. To them, it's all very real and can be terrifying or overwhelming. It's worth noting that not everyone hits specific symptoms at exact hour marks. Individual tolerance and conditions differ. But the overall progression is the same. The longer you go without sleep, the more your brain and body systems malfunction.
What's happening biologically in these extreme stages? One big factor is local sleep in the brain. Even though you're awake, parts of your brain start shutting down for little naps on their own. Studies in rats kept awake found that some neurons would essentially go off duty for a while, even as the rat was up and moving. In a sleep-deprived human, your frontal lobes, for judgment and decision-making, might go offline briefly, leading to impulsive or nonsensical actions. Your sensory areas might misfire, causing hallucinations or illusions. Meanwhile, stress chemicals like cortisol are through the roof, and the normal rhythm of hormones is disrupted. There's even evidence that after a couple of days awake, the brain's waste clearance system falters. For example, one study showed that a single night of no sleep led to a significant increase in beta amyloid, a toxin linked to Alzheimer's in the brain. In short, the brain is accumulating debris and damage that sleep would normally clean out. By the way, if all this sounds scary, remember, you would typically pass out from exhaustion before reaching the most extreme effects. The vast majority of people simply cannot stay awake beyond a certain point. Your brain will force microsleeps or outright make you black out long before sleep deprivation kills you. It's nearly impossible to willingly push to true fatal insomnia without stimulants or some pathology. So, while it's fascinating and a bit frightening to know what could happen, your body has some protective measures. Still, it's sobering to realize how much our mental stability hinges on sleep. You might be wondering, how far can someone actually go without sleep? What's the longest anyone has ever stayed awake, and what happened to them? Let's talk about some extreme and extremely ill-advised experiments and records that highlight just how critical sleep is. The Guinness World Record for the longest time without sleep was set in 1963 by a 17-year-old high school student named Randy Gardner. He decided to stay awake for a science fair project, and he managed to last 264 hours, which is 11 days straight with no sleep. That's right, 11 full days. He was closely monitored by researchers, including a famous sleep scientist, Dr. William Dement, so we have detailed observations of his ordeal. What happened to Randy as the days went by is both fascinating and cautionary. In the first couple of days, he experienced the expected things. By day 2, he had trouble focusing his eyes and identifying objects by touch. Sensory distortions began. By day 3, approximately 72 hours in, Randy became moody, clumsy, and started suffering short-term memory issues and difficulty speaking clearly. He also began to experience mild hallucinations at times. For example, he imagined seeing a street sign that wasn't there, or mistook a person for someone else. As he pressed on past day 4 and 5, the hallucinations and confusion got more pronounced. Observers noted that Randy became paranoid. At one point, he thought one of the researchers was conspiring against him, and he grew distrustful. He also imagined bizarre things. There's an anecdote that he thought he was a famous football player at one moment, and in another instance, he saw a forest path out of thin air. His friend, keeping him awake, reported Randy was often disoriented and irritable by this stage. By around day 10, Randy's waking brain was essentially in shambles. He could still carry on a conversation if you prompted him, and even managed a short press conference, slurring his words slightly. But he was extremely mentally foggy, forgetting things almost instantaneously. He also had episodes of microsleep and dreaming while awake. At one point, he thought he was a famous character from a cartoon, and another time, he became terrified of an object in the room with no real threat. Yet, remarkably, when asked to subtract numbers or perform simple tasks, sometimes he could still do it, albeit very slowly and with mistakes. When Randy finally went to sleep after reaching 264 hours, he slept 14 hours and 40 minutes straight, woke up briefly for a meal and a bathroom break, and then slept another 10+ hours. Amazingly, after a few days, he reported feeling pretty normal. Follow-up tests found no lasting physical or psychological damage. However, and here's a caveat, Randy later struggled with years of debilitating insomnia, which he attributed to that stunt. We can't be sure the long wake caused his chronic insomnia, but Randy himself felt it wrecked his sleep schedule for the rest of his life. It's an ironic outcome, proving you can stay awake 11 days, only to never sleep well again.
Not surprisingly, the Guinness Book of World Records stopped recognizing longest time awake records after Randy's experiment. It's simply too dangerous, essentially encouraging self-torture. There have been reports of others unofficially surpassing Randy. Somebody claimed 18 days, for instance. But without scientific verification and given the health risks, those aren't really celebrated. Randy's 11-day record still stands in the scientific literature as the benchmark, and no researcher is likely to attempt anything longer in a controlled setting due to ethical limits. We mentioned Peter Tripp earlier. He was a New York DJ who, in 1959, did an on-air marathon of 201 hours, about 8.4 days, awake for charity. Unlike Randy, Tripp used stimulant drugs, provided by supervising doctors, toward the end to keep him going, which likely exacerbated his psychosis. Tripp's case was harrowing. By around day 4, he was reportedly seeing hallucinations of spiders and mice, as we noted, and he began talking to imaginary people. In his final days awake, he needed help for even basic tasks and often didn't know where he was. After he finally slept, some accounts say Tripp's personality changed, though he also went through a career scandal later, so it's hard to attribute cause. But his stunt is another testament that anyone will lose their grip on reality without sleep. There's also the extremely rare case of people who biologically cannot sleep. Fatal familial insomnia, FFI. This is a genetic disorder, a prion disease, where in middle age, the person's brain develops prion damage in sleep-regulating areas, and they progressively lose the ability to sleep at all. Within a matter of a year or two of onset, after months of worsening insomnia, they inevitably die from total sleep deprivation. FFI patients suffer weight loss, dementia-like confusion, hallucinations, and organ failure as the condition runs its course. It's a tragic, real example that if the brain truly cannot get sleep, the body cannot survive. Thankfully, FFI is incredibly rare,
Only a few dozen families worldwide have this gene. But it underscores that while we can bounce back from short-term sleep loss, permanent loss of the ability to sleep is lethal. You might wonder, can someone actually die from just staying awake too long voluntarily? Outside of FFI, there's no confirmed case of a human dying purely from staying awake. Usually, you'd either break down and sleep or succumb to an accident caused by your impaired state first. However, animal studies give insight. In the 1980s, researchers did an experiment keeping rats awake using gentle stimuli. After about 2 weeks of total sleep deprivation, the rats died. They developed sores, lost weight despite eating more, and their body temperature dropped. Their bodies basically lost regulation. Autopsies pointed to immune system failure and systemic infection as likely causes. So, in mammals, it seems roughly 2 to 3 weeks without any sleep is beyond the limit of viability. Humans would probably be similar, though we'd pass out before that time. In summary, people have pushed the boundaries of sleeplessness a few times in history, and the consistent finding is the brain and body progressively break down. Hallucinations, paranoia, cognitive collapse, all are inevitable if you press on long enough. We're simply not built to go without that nightly recharge. Fortunately, you don't need to even approach those extremes to reap the cautionary lessons. For most of us, the more relevant issue is not an 11-day no-sleep stunt, but rather something much subtler, regularly skimping on sleep by a couple of hours each night. That chronic sleep debt can also have serious impacts, just in different ways. So let's shift from the dramatic one-off scenarios to the far more common problem of chronic sleep deprivation in daily life. You don't have to pull all-nighters to suffer from sleep deprivation. For most people, the problem is chronic partial sleep deprivation, consistently getting less sleep than your body needs. Maybe you only sleep 5 or 6 hours a night due to work, family obligations, or late-night screen time. Over time, that adds up to a significant sleep debt, and it can have serious effects on your health and daily performance.
First, let's talk about how common this is. As mentioned earlier, surveys indicate that in many countries, roughly 1/3 of adults regularly sleep less than the recommended 7 to 8 hours. In the US, for example, the CDC found about 35% of adults are getting under 7 hours per night on average. In the UK, a similar situation. A large proportion of adults log only 6 hours or so. Matthew Walker, a prominent sleep scientist, notes that more than 2/3 of adults in developed nations fail to get a full 8 hours. Over the past few decades, our average sleep duration has steadily decreased. Back in 1960, adults averaged around 8.5 hours a night. By the 2000s, that average dropped below 7 hours. We've essentially given up 1 to 2 hours of sleep per night in the name of productivity, entertainment, and around-the-clock lifestyles. Now, you might say, well, I get about 5 or 6 hours and I feel fine. I've adapted. Many people think they've adjusted to short sleep, but studies show that's largely an illusion. In one study, participants were limited to approximately 6 hours sleep per night for 2 weeks.
They said they felt only slightly tired after a while. But when researchers tested their reaction times and cognitive performance, these folks were as impaired as someone who had stayed up all night. They had no idea their performance had tanked so badly. They rated themselves as only mildly affected. This shows that we often can't sense our own cognitive decline from sleep loss. You get used to feeling okay in a groggy, foggy state and forget what fully awake feels like. Chronic sleep restriction affects attention, executive function, and basically any task requiring higher-order thinking. You might manage simple routine tasks all right, but as soon as something complex or novel arises, the lack of sleep will show. Problem-solving becomes harder, creativity diminishes, and memory is less reliable. Not to mention productivity. People who sleep too little often try to work longer hours to compensate, but they work inefficiently. Studies suggest that by sleeping more, you might actually get more done in less time because your brain works better. Another big area is safety. We discussed how extreme sleepiness leads to accidents. Even on a smaller scale, regularly sleeping, say, 5 to 6 hours a night, significantly increases your risk of a car accident or workplace injury. One study found that people who slept less than 6 hours were 1.5 times more likely to get into a car crash than those who slept 7 to 8 hours. And if they slept less than 5 hours, the risk was 2 to 3 times higher. We already talked about how driving on very little sleep is like driving drunk. Well, consider that many people are out there commuting on insufficient sleep every day. That's a lot of potential for errors on the road. In fact, a majority of drowsy driving crashes involve people who chronically undersleep, not just those who pulled one all-nighter. Chronic sleep deprivation also subtly erodes mood and mental health. We'll dive deeper into this soon, but briefly, if you're regularly short on sleep, you're more likely to feel stressed and gloomy. Long-term studies show that insomnia, persistent trouble sleeping, is a major risk factor for developing depression and anxiety disorders. In fact, chronic insomnia can raise the risk of major depression tenfold. The relationship is two-way. Not sleeping enough can contribute to mental health issues, and those issues can further disturb sleep, creating a vicious cycle.
Physically, habitual short sleep, under approximately 7 hours, has been linked to a whole host of health problems. We'll cover these in detail in the next section, but in a nutshell, heart disease, high blood pressure, stroke, diabetes, weight gain, weakened immune function. Chronic lack of sleep plays a role in all of these. It's a slow, cumulative strain on the body. You might not feel it acutely the way you feel next day fatigue, but internally, your body is out of balance. It's telling that people who consistently sleep, say, only 5 hours, have higher mortality rates in long-term studies than those who sleep a solid 7 to 8. It truly adds up. Let's talk about the concept of sleep debt. This refers to the idea that if you don't get enough sleep, you accumulate a deficit that needs to be paid back. If you're short 2 hours each night, Monday through Friday, that's a 10-hour debt by the weekend. Many try to repay by sleeping in on Saturday or Sunday. Extra sleep on weekends does help to an extent. You'll feel better than if you hadn't gotten it, but research suggests it might not fully erase all the effects of weekday deprivation. Some cognitive deficits can linger or quickly recur when you go back to short sleeping.
It's sort of like crash dieting versus a consistent, healthy diet. You can't just binge on sleep once a week and expect to be optimally alert the rest of the time. Your body, and brain especially, prefers a steady, nightly dose of adequate sleep. Think of chronic sleep loss like running a machine continuously without proper maintenance. You might not have a catastrophic failure immediately, but wear and tear builds up. The machine runs hotter, slower, and less efficiently. Over time, components fail prematurely. For us, that means accelerated aging and a predisposition to disease. But if you do give yourself regular maintenance, i.e., sufficient sleep, you can restore a lot of function. The encouraging part is that, unlike many health issues that require medication or big lifestyle overhauls, sleep is a straightforward fix. Prioritize more sleep, and benefits start accruing quickly. Many people don't realize they're chronically sleep-deprived until they make a change. Then they're amazed at how much better they feel and function with an extra hour or two of sleep. So if you're listening to this and recognize yourself as someone who gets by on 5 to 6 hours, consider this your gentle nudge. There's a good chance you have no idea how much sharper, happier, and healthier you'd be with more rest. As we continue, you'll hear exactly why that is, as we break down the specific consequences of sleep deprivation on the brain, mood, body, and safety. One of the first areas to suffer from too little sleep is the brain, especially our higher mental functions. We've touched on memory and focus already in short-term effects, but chronic sleep deprivation continues to impair your brain in various ways. Attention and alertness. We all know the feeling of being groggy and easily distracted after a poor night's sleep. When you're sleep-deprived, your ability to sustain attention plummets. You experience more attention lapses, where you momentarily zone out. In studies where sleep-restricted people are asked to monitor a screen for a rare signal, they consistently miss more signals because their mind blanks out for brief periods. These are essentially microsleeps or local sleeps in the brain, and they happen more frequently the more hours or days you go with insufficient sleep. In real life, that could mean missing a turn while driving, or forgetting what part of a project you were working on a minute ago. It makes you unreliable in tasks that demand continuous vigilance, reaction time, and motor skills. A tired brain reacts more slowly. This has been demonstrated in simple reaction time tests. For example, pressing a button when a light appears. With just a bit of sleep loss, reaction times lengthen. In fact, one study showed that being awake 19 hours, like 7 a.m. to 2 a.m., slowed reaction times as much as having a blood alcohol level of 0.05%. Imagine how that translates to things like hitting the brakes in time or catching a falling object. You're just slower. Fine motor skills can degrade too. People make more small coordination errors when they haven't slept well, like their hands tremble slightly or they fumble with keys.
Working memory and mental sharpness. Working memory is your ability to hold information in mind, like remembering a phone number long enough to dial it. Sleep deprivation taxes this greatly. You'll find yourself saying, "Wait, what was I doing?" more often. Complex tasks that require keeping track of multiple things, like cooking several dishes at once or managing multiple work streams, become much harder. Sleep-deprived individuals often feel brain fog, not a clinical term, but accurately describing the hazy, sluggish thinking where it's a struggle to piece thoughts together. Learning and new memories. This is huge.
If you're trying to learn new information or skills while sleep deprived, you're at a disadvantage. For one, you're not as attentive, so you don't take in information well. Secondly, even if you do manage to focus and learn something, your brain may not consolidate that memory properly without sleep. Normally, during sleep, especially deep sleep and REM, the brain strengthens new memories and integrates them. Without adequate sleep after learning, people retain much less of that information. You might recall the gist, but miss details, or forget it entirely after a few days. This is why sleeping on it is advice for studying. It truly solidifies memories. Conversely, cramming all night and then skipping sleep often backfires. You might remember little of what you learned. Moreover, lack of sleep makes you more prone to false memories. There's intriguing research where people were shown slides of an event, then later, after either being sleep-deprived or well-rested, they were fed some misleading details about the event. The sleep-deprived participants were significantly more likely to remember the false details as if they were real. Their fuzzy brains basically got tricked. This has important implications, like in eyewitness testimony. A sleep-deprived witness might confidently recall things that never happened. Executive function and decision-making. The prefrontal cortex, which handles executive functions like planning, problem-solving, and judgment, is very sensitive to sleep loss. Sleep-deprived people often become more rigid in their thinking and less innovative when solving problems. They'll tend to stick with an approach even if it's not working, having trouble thinking of alternatives. Psychologists call it perseveration. Also, their risk evaluation goes awry. Some studies show that on tasks involving risk and reward, like gambling simulations, sleep-deprived individuals make riskier choices and are more optimistic about them, even when it's not warranted. This is likely because the prefrontal cortex's control is weakened, and the brain's reward centers, like the striatum, might get disproportionately active, leading to impulsive or risky behavior. A real-world example. Tired people might impulsively send that angry email or make that big purchase without thinking it through, decisions they'd likely reconsider after a good night's sleep. We see this in work contexts too. Exhausted managers might greenlight a project with obvious flaws or stubbornly commit to a plan even when new evidence suggests it's a bad idea. Creativity and divergent thinking. When you're well rested, your brain is better at making novel connections and thinking outside the box. Sleep deprivation, however, seems to particularly blunt creative thinking. In one experiment, people were asked to come up with alternative uses for common objects, a standard creativity test. Sleep-deprived participants generated fewer and less original ideas compared to when they were rested. They also struggled more with tasks requiring flexible thinking, often fixating on one solution. Essentially, being tired makes your thinking more concrete and tunnel-visioned. It's harder to get that creative spark or aha insight. Communication and social cognition. Ever notice you're not as articulate when you're tired? Sleep-deprived individuals often report trouble finding the right words, and their speech can become slower and less fluid. In extreme cases, they may slur or trail off, as seen with Randy Gardner after many days awake. Additionally, interpreting others' communication is impaired. Studies found that sleep-deprived people struggle to accurately read emotional expressions. They might misinterpret neutral faces as hostile or not recognize subtle signs of happiness or sadness. This can obviously lead to miscommunications or unnecessary conflicts. We'll talk more about emotional misreading in the mood section, but it's worth noting here as a cognitive social overlap.
Microsleeps and automatic behavior. With chronic lack of sleep, especially in sedate conditions, like a warm room after lunch or a long drive, you will experience microdoses of sleep, even if you don't intend to. Your brain might briefly dip into stage 1 sleep while you're still technically awake. You won't necessarily fall over or close your eyes fully, but your EEG brainwaves would show microsleep patterns. In those moments, you're essentially offline. You won't process information and you won't remember what happened in that time. People may stare blankly for a few seconds during a conversation and then snap back, saying, "Sorry, I lost my train of thought." Often, they had a microsleep. In other cases, the brain might enter a kind of autopilot mode, automatic behavior, where it performs routine actions correctly but without conscious oversight, like typing the same word over and over without realizing it, or driving a familiar route and not remembering the last few minutes of the drive. This is the brain trying to give parts of itself a rest while you're still nominally awake. All these cognitive deficits accumulate into what we often call brain fog. It's not a medical term, but it perfectly captures the feeling. Groggy, slow thinking, forgetful, a bit detached. You might get by in this state for a while, but you won't be firing on all cylinders. To illustrate the everyday impact, imagine you're at work on little sleep. You have an email to write, a report to analyze, and a meeting to contribute to. With a fresh brain, you might knock out the email in 5 minutes, catch a key insight in the report, and offer a clever solution in the meeting. With a sleep-deprived brain, that email might take 15 foggy minutes and include embarrassing typos. You might skim the report and miss a crucial pattern, and in the meeting, you just nod along because forming a coherent thought feels like wading through molasses. In fact, you might doze off in the meeting for a second and miss a question directed at you. It's not a far-fetched scenario. It's daily life for many who are burning the candle at both ends. The bottom line is, sleep deprivation makes us dumber, slower, and more error-prone. It's like loading your brain with a heavy software update that never finishes. Everything just lags. The good news is these effects are largely reversible with rest. Give your brain the sleep it's craving, and it'll bounce back impressively. Memory sharpens, focus returns, creativity flows. Sleep is essentially a reset button for the brain's efficiency. All right, with our brains sufficiently frazzled by facts, let's move on to how lack of sleep affects something arguably even more personal: our mood and mental health. After all, it's not just about being mentally slow. Sleep loss can make us feel pretty awful emotionally, too. Mood and mental health impact. It's no coincidence that when you haven't slept well, you tend to be cranky or down. There is a powerful connection between sleep and emotional regulation. In fact, adequate sleep is protective of mental health, while inadequate sleep can contribute to or worsen emotional issues. Let's break down how sleep deprivation affects mood, stress, and psychiatric conditions. Increased irritability and mood swings. This is one of the first things people notice. With poor sleep, the threshold for annoyance or anger lowers dramatically. Minor hiccups, a spilled coffee, a slow internet connection, someone chewing loudly
can make you unreasonably irritable when you're tired. You might snap at loved ones or colleagues over trivial things, then later realize it was the fatigue talking. Part of this is because the amygdala, the brain's emotion center, becomes overactive when you're sleep-deprived, while the prefrontal cortex, which normally helps control impulses, is less effective. One study found that after a single sleepless night, the amygdala's response to negative stimuli can be up to 60% stronger than normal. So you're essentially more emotionally volatile. People often describe themselves as grumpy or on edge when tired. That's exactly it.
Interestingly, sleep deprivation doesn't only bias towards negative emotions. It can also produce inappropriate positive mood, almost a manic-like giddiness. Some folks get loopy and giggly when extremely tired, laughing at things that aren't that funny. This overtired silliness is again a sign of poor emotional control. The brain is swinging between extremes, trying to keep itself awake. Of course, that frivolity can swiftly turn to tears or anger the next moment. In short, emotions become less stable. Heightened anxiety and stress. Lack of sleep puts the body into a stressed state. Levels of the stress hormone cortisol tend to be higher when you haven't slept enough, especially later in the day when they should be tapering off. Physically, you might feel jittery, heart racing a bit, maybe sweaty, which the brain can interpret as anxiety. Mentally, the tired brain is more prone to worry. It's as if the volume on your anxiety knob gets turned up. Problems seem bigger than they are, and you have less resilience to cope. Research shows that after sleep deprivation, the brain's amygdala, fear center, and insular cortex, which processes bodily states, react more strongly to negative or disturbing images. Meanwhile, the medial prefrontal cortex, which helps calm down the amygdala, is less active. This pattern is very similar to what is seen in anxiety disorders. In everyday terms, that means you might feel more stressed and overwhelmed by things that normally wouldn't faze you much. Even mild sleep loss, like 6 hours instead of 8 for several nights, can make you feel more anxious and quick to feel stressed out. You might notice you have less patience with normal stressors at work or home. Insufficient sleep has also been linked to an increased risk of developing an anxiety disorder. In fact, one longitudinal study found that people with insomnia had a significantly higher likelihood of developing an anxiety disorder within 1 to 3 years compared to good sleepers. Part of the reason is likely that chronic sleeplessness keeps the brain in a hyper-aroused state, essentially stuck in fight or flight mode. Depressed mood. After a bad night's sleep, people often report feeling bleh, low energy, low motivation, maybe a bit blue. If sleep deprivation continues, these depressive feelings can deepen. Chronic insomnia is strongly associated with depression. It's both a symptom and a cause. Estimates suggest that people with persistent insomnia are 10 times more likely to develop clinical depression than those who sleep well. The relationship is complex. Depression itself can cause poor sleep. But we know that improving sleep can improve mood. In fact, some antidepressant therapies specifically target sleep improvement because when the sleep problem is resolved, often the depression lifts greatly. Why does lack of sleep contribute to low mood?
For one, neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, crucial for mood regulation, are impacted by sleep. Sleep deprivation can reduce serotonin sensitivity and dopamine levels in certain brain regions, leading to feelings of anhedonia, inability to feel pleasure, and gloom. Also, when you're tired, you're less likely to engage in activities you enjoy because you lack energy, which can start a feedback loop of withdrawal and isolation, hallmark behaviors in depression. Reduced optimism and sociability. A well-rested brain tends to be more positive and social. A tired brain, not so much. There's evidence that sleep-deprived people perceive neutral or even friendly faces as more threatening or unfriendly. One study at UC Berkeley found that participants were more likely to interpret facial expressions as negative and had blunted responses to positive expressions when they were sleep-deprived. The same study noted that when these tired individuals were shown friendly faces, their own social desire to interact dropped, as if their brain was saying, "People are not rewarding when I'm exhausted." Indeed, other research has observed that sleepy people tend to withdraw socially and report feeling lonelier. What's wild is this can become a self-fulfilling cycle. One experiment found that well-rested observers who watched videos of sleep-deprived people perceived them to be lonelier and were less interested in socializing with them. They even felt a bit lonelier themselves after the interaction, as if poor sleep were socially contagious in its effects. So going around chronically tired could inadvertently push friends and family away, and then less social support can worsen mood further.
Emotional sensitivity and reactivity. Beyond just irritable or sad, a lack of sleep makes your emotions more extreme. You might cry at a sappy commercial or get disproportionately angry at a mild criticism. Your brain loses the nuanced control. There's a term, emotional volatility, that definitely increases. Also, lack of sleep dulls your ability to celebrate the good. You could get decent news and feel nothing but numb because your reward circuits aren't firing normally. That in itself can be distressing, like you can't enjoy things you normally would, which again overlaps with depressive symptomatology. Serious mental health risks. Prolonged sleep deprivation or severe insomnia can potentially precipitate major mental health episodes. For example, in individuals with bipolar disorder, sleep loss is a known trigger for manic episodes. It's not uncommon that someone stays up for a night or two working or traveling and then launches into mania, euphoric, hyperactive state, if they have that vulnerability. In the general population, going without sleep long enough can cause hallucinations and delusions, as we saw with extreme cases, essentially a brief psychosis. Now, most people won't experience that unless they literally force themselves awake for days. But even mild perceptual changes or paranoia can pop up for some after extended poor sleep. Stress and coping. When we're tired, our ability to cope with stress is compromised. That's partly hormonal, higher cortisol, etc., and partly psychological, reduced resilience. Something stressful, say a traffic jam or a work deadline, feels far more stressful if you're on 4 hours of sleep versus well-rested. Tired brains tend to default to catastrophizing,
expecting or imagining the worst outcomes, which fuels a cycle of stress and anxiety. Small problems feel huge. This can lead to a constant sense of being overwhelmed. Self-medicating and habits. Unfortunately, many people attempt to counteract chronic tiredness with substances. Lots of caffeine, understandable, but also sometimes alcohol or sedatives at night to force sleep, which can start a bad cycle. Alcohol might help you conk out, but it fragments your sleep and reduces REM, leading to poorer quality sleep, and then you're tired again next day. Some may turn to smoking or other stimulants to feel alert, which have their own health impacts. In extreme cases, chronic insomnia can even lead to misuse of prescription drugs or other harmful coping methods. We see this especially in those with untreated sleep apnea or chronic insomnia. Higher rates of substance use as they struggle to get rest or feel functional. Now, it's not all doom and gloom. The flip side is that restoring good sleep often dramatically improves mood and mental well-being. Therapists treating depression or anxiety will almost always address sleep, because if you can get a patient sleeping better, their symptoms often lighten noticeably. Think of a time you were super tired and upset about something. Then, after a solid sleep, that same issue felt more manageable or your outlook improved. That's a common experience. There's even a phenomenon where one full night of sleep deprivation can oddly have a temporary antidepressant effect in some people with severe depression. Their mood lifts until they sleep again. It's an experimental therapy used occasionally, highlighting how intimately linked sleep is with mood-regulating systems. However, staying awake is clearly not a sustainable or healthy antidepressant strategy. It just underlines the connection. One more interesting tidbit: dream sleep, REM, appears to play a role in processing emotions. During REM, levels of stress neurotransmitters drop, and the brain replays emotional memories in a safer environment, which might help us work through difficult feelings. If you don't get enough REM, which tends to happen in the latter part of a night's sleep, or if sleep is fragmented, you might not have that overnight therapy, so to speak. This can leave emotional memories raw. It's been hypothesized that PTSD involves a failure to adequately process traumatic memories during sleep. In general, sleep has a healing effect on emotional wounds, and without it, those wounds can stay fresh. To sum up, sleep deprivation makes you moodier, more stressed, more prone to depression and anxiety, and less emotionally resilient. It can warp your social interactions by making you withdraw or misinterpret others. It's like going through the day with a filter that leans negative or overreactive. If you've ever said, "Sorry, I'm just tired," after snapping at someone, you were acknowledging this very effect.
The key takeaway is that a healthy amount of sleep is essential for stable mood and mental health. Conversely, persistent sleep loss is a major risk factor for emotional struggles. The good news, again, is that mood often improves drastically with better sleep. Ever notice how everything feels a bit brighter after a really good night's rest? That's the immediate mood-boosting power of sleep at work. All right, we've covered the mind pretty thoroughly, both cognitively and emotionally. It's clear that sleep deprivation can leave you feeling and acting below your best. Now let's look at the body, because the impacts of sleep loss are far from just in your head. Lack of sleep can have some serious consequences for your physical health, from your heart
to your waistline, to your immune system. We often focus on how sleep affects how we feel or think, but behind the scenes, insufficient sleep can wreak havoc on nearly every physiological system. Chronic sleep deprivation is associated with a shorter lifespan, largely because it elevates the risk for many serious health conditions. Let's explore some of the major areas. Cardiovascular health. One of the most well-established links is between poor sleep and heart disease. Regularly sleeping less than 7 hours a night has been tied to higher rates of hypertension, high blood pressure. Normally, during deep sleep, your blood pressure dips by about 10 to 20%. If you cut sleep short, you don't get that nightly reset, and over time your baseline BP can creep up. Even one night of total sleep deprivation can cause a temporary spike in blood pressure the next day. High blood pressure is a major risk factor for coronary artery disease, stroke, and other cardiovascular problems. Beyond blood pressure, chronic short sleepers are more likely to develop coronary heart disease, clogged arteries, and experience heart attacks. For instance, a long-term study in 2011 found that women sleeping 5 hours or less were 39% more likely to develop heart disease than those who slept 8 hours. Another study noted that habitually sleeping under 6 hours was associated with a 20% higher incidence of heart attack in both men and women. Part of the reason is that lack of sleep is associated with increased inflammation in the body, higher levels of markers like C-reactive protein, which contributes to arterial plaque buildup. Also, sleep deprivation often coexists with other heart risk factors. It can lead to overeating and weight gain, which we'll get to. It messes with blood sugar, diabetes risk, and it increases stress hormones, all of which put strain on the heart. Stroke and other vascular issues. Similar to heart attacks, strokes, blood clots, or bleeds in the brain have been linked to poor sleep. In one study, people who slept under 6 hours were shown to have a higher stroke risk, even if they had no other risk factors like obesity or diabetes. Sleep apnea, a condition causing breathing interruptions and sleep fragmentation, especially has a strong correlation with stroke and heart failure, due to the repeated drops in oxygen and surges in blood pressure during the night. Moreover, there's emerging evidence that chronic sleep loss may contribute to atherosclerosis, hardening of the arteries throughout the body, not just the heart, by promoting inflammation and reducing the health of blood vessel linings. Metabolism and weight. Lack of sleep can seriously sabotage your metabolism and is a risk factor for obesity. When you're sleep deprived, your body's regulation of hunger goes haywire. Sleep influences two key hormones, ghrelin, which signals hunger, and leptin, which signals fullness. Guess what happens when you don't sleep enough? Ghrelin levels go up and leptin levels go down. Essentially, your body starts screaming, "I'm hungry," and at the same time quiets the "I'm full" signals. In one study, after just 2 nights of 4-hour sleep, participants had 28% higher ghrelin and 18% lower leptin than when they slept a full night. No surprise, they reported a 24% increase in appetite, particularly craving high-carb, calorie-dense foods. Think sweets, bread, pasta, chips. The body likely craves quick energy and comfort foods to keep the tired brain going.
Over time, this can lead to eating significantly more calories. And not only that, you have more hours awake to potentially snack. Plus, when you're exhausted, you're less inclined to exercise. Who has the energy for a jog on bad sleep? It's a perfect storm for weight gain. Large population studies have consistently found that short sleepers are more likely to be overweight. In fact, people who average under 5 hours of sleep are 50% more likely to be obese than those getting 7 to 8 hours. Of course, correlation isn't causation, but experimental studies support the causal role. Restrict people's sleep and they tend to gain more fat, especially in the abdominal region, even if their diet is similar. Sleep loss also affects how your body handles sugar. After just a week of partial sleep deprivation, healthy young adults in one study started showing signs of insulin resistance, meaning their cells weren't responding well to insulin and their blood sugar was elevated. It was as if they'd aged or gained weight, since insulin resistance is a precursor to diabetes. When you're sleep deprived, your fat cells actually lose some of their sensitivity to insulin, so your pancreas has to secrete more insulin to compensate. Over time, this can wear out the pancreas and lead to type 2 diabetes. Indeed, epidemiological studies find that habitually sleeping under 6 hours is associated with a significantly higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes. Part of this is mediated by weight gain, as mentioned, but even independent of weight, sleep seems to play a role in glucose regulation. Immune function and illness. Ever notice you tend to catch colds when you're run down and not sleeping well? That's not a coincidence. Sleep is critical for a robust immune system. During deep sleep, the body increases production of certain immune cells and proteins like cytokines that fight infection and reduce inflammation. If you cut sleep short, you impair that process. A famous study took volunteers and exposed them to the common cold virus via nasal drops. Those who had been sleeping less than 6 hours a night the week prior were over 4 times more likely to catch the cold than those who slept more than 7 hours. It's a dramatic effect. Roughly 45% of the short sleepers got sick versus about 18% of the well-rested group. That shows how even a modest difference in sleep can translate to a big difference in whether your immune system can fend off a virus. The likely reason is that certain immune cells, like T cells, don't function as efficiently when you're sleep deprived, and antibody responses are blunted. In a related vein, vaccines are less effective if you're not sleeping well. Studies have shown that people who don't get enough sleep in the days around a vaccination produce significantly fewer antibodies in response. For example, in one study on the hepatitis B vaccine, participants who slept under 6 hours a night were much less likely to develop the necessary antibody levels for immunity, essentially rendering the vaccine less protective. Similarly, folks who were sleep deprived produced 50% less antibodies to a flu shot than those well rested. So, if you're getting a vaccine, make sure to sleep well to truly get the benefit. Chronic sleep loss also seems to increase systemic inflammation, as mentioned. Higher levels of C-reactive protein, interleukin-6, and other inflammatory markers are found in short sleepers.
Chronic inflammation is implicated in many diseases: heart disease, certain cancers, neurodegenerative diseases, etc. This could be one reason poor sleep is linked to those outcomes. Hormonal balance. We've touched on appetite and stress hormones, but there are other hormonal impacts. For instance, growth hormone is mainly released during deep sleep. Growth hormone is not just for kids' growth. In adults, it helps with tissue repair, muscle growth, and bone health. If you don't get enough deep sleep, you may have less growth hormone circulating, which over the long term could affect muscle maintenance and the body's repair processes. And yes, maybe even skin health. There's something to the idea of beauty sleep, as growth hormone and blood flow during sleep help keep skin youthful. Sleep deprivation can also throw thyroid hormones off balance and tends to lower testosterone levels in men. One study found young men who slept 5 hours a night for a week had markedly lower morning testosterone than when they slept a full night, equivalent to someone 10 years older. Low testosterone can affect mood, vitality, and muscle/fat distribution.
Beauty sleep and appearance. It might sound shallow, but it's true. Sleep-deprived people often look different. In a study where observers rated photos of individuals after a normal sleep versus after sleep deprivation, the sleep-deprived were rated as less attractive, less healthy, and more tired-looking. Common visible signs were droopy hanging eyelids, redder eyes, more swollen eyes, and darker under-eye circles. The skin can also appear paler and more wrinkled when someone is exhausted, likely due to increased cortisol breaking down collagen and less skin repair at night. In fact, chronic poor sleepers tend to have more fine lines, uneven pigmentation, and looser skin over time, as some dermatological studies have noted. Collagen, which keeps skin firm, is repaired during sleep, so shortchange that, and skin may age faster. So beauty sleep isn't just a saying. Your body literally uses sleep to maintain your appearance.
But beyond skin deep, things like hair loss or brittle nails can also be exacerbated by stress and poor sleep. The body triages resources when under duress, and maintaining luxurious hair or strong nails is low priority compared to vital organs. So chronic stress from lack of sleep might contribute to those issues in susceptible people. Pain sensitivity. Lack of sleep can make you feel pain more acutely. Research shows that when people are sleep deprived, their pain threshold is lower, meaning sensations that wouldn't normally be very painful hurt more. This is particularly relevant for people with chronic pain conditions. Not sleeping well can lead to a vicious cycle of pain and insomnia amplifying each other. Even healthy individuals, after losing sleep, find their backs ache more, or a mild heat on the skin feels hotter than it otherwise would. The brain's pain-inhibiting circuits just aren't as effective when tired. Longevity and disease risk. Given all these factors, heart, metabolism, immune, etc., it's not surprising that habitually sleeping too little is associated with a higher risk of early death. One large study over 10+ years found those sleeping less than 5 hours had about a 15% increased risk of dying from any cause compared to 7-hour sleepers, even after controlling for other factors.
Particularly, deaths from cardiovascular events and from accidents were higher. There's also some evidence linking chronic sleep deprivation to neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's. One reason is that during deep sleep, especially slow-wave sleep, the brain clears out metabolic waste like beta-amyloid plaques. If you don't get enough deep sleep, more amyloid might accumulate over the years, potentially raising Alzheimer's risk. Studies have indeed found that people with poor sleep in midlife have a higher likelihood of developing dementia later on. To put it in perspective, routinely getting adequate sleep could be as important to your long-term health as not smoking, having a good diet, and exercising. It's one of the pillars of health. When it falters, the whole building, i.e. your body, gets weaker. On a lighter note, consider this. We often measure wellness by how energetic or alive we feel. Nothing torpedoes that feeling like lack of sleep. By contrast, have you ever seen someone after they start getting enough rest? Their eyes brighten, their skin glows a bit more, they stand a little taller. Fun fact, you actually are slightly taller in the morning after lying down all night because your spinal discs rehydrate. Sleep literally can restore your stature. Good sleep is essentially a natural elixir of health and vitality. We've covered a huge amount of ground, from the mental to the physical, from small annoyances to major medical issues, all influenced by sleep. By now, it should be clear that sleep deprivation is no joke for your body either. It's as if lack of sleep ages you faster and makes your body more vulnerable to every kind of stress. The overarching theme is that sleep is the time when your body repairs, balances, and regulates itself. If you don't give your body that time, things slowly fall apart, sometimes imperceptibly at first, but eventually noticeably. If you're still awake at this point, we've journeyed through more than 100 facts detailing how lack of sleep affects everything from your brain to your toes. By now, it should be crystal clear that sleep is not a luxury, it's a necessity. It's the time when your brain cleans house, your body repairs itself, and your psyche finds balance. When you skimp on sleep, you run up a debt, and that debt will demand repayment in the form of fatigue, poor performance, ill health, or all of the above.
The flip side of all these scary sounding effects is that improving your sleep can have almost magical benefits. Unlike some health fixes that take weeks or months to show results, getting better sleep can make you feel noticeably better the very next day. More energetic, clearer-headed, in a better mood. It's often that quick. Over the long run, consistent good sleep is like a fountain of youth. It keeps your heart young, your metabolism sharp, your immune system strong, and even your skin and hair more vibrant. As one sleep scientist aptly said, sleep is the Swiss Army knife of health. When sleep is deficient, there is sickness and disease, and when sleep is abundant, there is vitality and health. So how do we apply this knowledge? It comes down to prioritizing sleep in our lives. That might mean setting a regular bedtime and sticking to it, creating a wind-down routine at night, making your sleep environment comfortable, dark, cool, and quiet, cutting back on late-night caffeine or alcohol, and perhaps saying no to that next Netflix episode when it's already late. It could mean seeking treatment for sleep disorders like apnea or chronic insomnia, which, by the way, are very treatable and worth addressing. Basically, it means respecting sleep as essential self-care. We live in a go, go, go society, but remember, all the productivity hacks or wellness trends in the world won't help if you're running on empty. In fact, one of the most productive things you can do is to get enough sleep. Your work will likely be higher quality for it, and you'll probably get it done in less time because you're not slogging through brain fog. Not to mention, you'll enjoy your waking hours more when you're well rested. You'll have the energy to engage with people and activities you love, rather than just dragging yourself through the day. As we end this exploration, the take-home message is simple. Sleep is critical for your mind, mood, and body. Neglecting it has real costs, but prioritizing it is an investment in every aspect of your health and happiness. If some of these facts were extreme enough to keep you awake, hopefully they also motivate you to treat yourself to some quality slumber going forward. Thanks for watching. Good night.